Chapter 2. Sky frowned in surprise and then nodded as she filled the bottle and mixed it before plunging it into cold water to cool. I could be. Where's Sparky? Out in the back garden. I'm afraid we've no food for him, Enzo reminded her. Sparky hungry. Brody hungry, her little brother complained. Hungry, she corrected as she slotted bread into the toaster. The toast is on now and I bought some cereal last night. Housekeeping, she reflected absently. It would give them a safe place to live and allow her to continue looking after the children. Taking care of one man's household requirements didn't sound too onerous either, and best of all, while she was earning, she would be free to search out another teaching job, temporary or otherwise. Allowing Richie to clip her employment wings and keep her at home had been a mistake, but at the time she had been glad of the opportunity to spend time with her newly bereaved little brother and sister. It had been a period of terrible upheaval for all of them, she conceded belatedly. Maybe grief for the loving parents she had lost had played a part in her decision to move in with Richie. Let me take the baby, Enzo offered, reaching out to cradle Shona and sit down by the kitchen table. Exactly what would the job entail? Sky asked. It would only be for a couple of months because I won't be in England much beyond Christmas, Enzo warned. You look after the house and the shopping and the cooking and I'll be happy. I only need a late evening meal. I'll be working most of the time. Sky tested the milk from the bottle on her wrist. It sounds good. I could do with some breathing space to get myself back together before I make a fresh start somewhere. What would you pay me? Enzo quoted a sum. That's far too much, she told him instantly, shocked by the amount of money he was offering her. You'll be doing everything here, and I suspect that you could do with the money, Enzo pointed out calmly. As soon as your car is back on the road, you'll have your independence back. I'll take it. What's the address of this place? I need to let my sister know where we are. Taking note of the address, she gathered Shona back into her arms and gave her the bottle, which she drank happily, big blue eyes firmly locked on Sky's face. If you can get the coffee machine to produce a decent coffee, there'll be a bonus, Enzo informed her wryly. It's not rocket science. Might as well be. Enzo sighed, watching her pour cereal for Brody and seat him at the table, before starting to butter toast. You're good at multitasking. You have to be with kids. Do you want any toast? She asked. Her slight frame was really tiny in his clothes, and there was something oddly sexy about knowing she was wearing something of his against her skin. He didn't know what it was, didn't wish to dwell on that angle. Such considerations were out of bounds now that she was an employee. In any case, he was very aware of how vulnerable she was right now. She'd clearly been in an abusive relationship, and he felt a responsibility towards her. He would need to be careful to make her feel safe, and not give her any reason to be nervous around him. Her movements were very stiff, and he noticed that she was avoiding bending, or twisting as best she could. Not an easy challenge with young children to look after, he reflected grimly. One eye was encircled with multicolored bruising, but nothing could hide her delicate bone structure, her pale as alabaster, perfect skin, or the soft fullness of her pink lips. Enzo? Toast? She queried when he failed to respond. Enzo shook his handsome dark head a little as though to clear his thoughts. No, thanks. I like fruit, coffee, and a croissant in the morning. Okay, you've got yourself a housekeeper, Sky told him. I'll get our stuff picked up today and go shopping. He set a black credit card down on the table. What's my budget? There isn't one. What do you like to eat? Sky inquired as she dug a small notebook out of her bag and flashed a pen. And what do you not like? Those details acquired, Enzo stood up. We have to exchange phone numbers. I'm sending 2 men with you to collect your belongings just in case your ex is there and causes trouble. You need to be protected and you will have the kids with you, which is enough of a challenge. Thanks. I'm very grateful. Could you take the car seats out of your car before you leave? Sky reminded him as she took his number and shot a text to him. In truth, she was dreading that moment that she would have to enter the apartment, unsure as to Richie's whereabouts. Stalwart Mail Company would be a very welcome support. As it was still early, she decided to ring her sister and hope to catch her before she went to bed. Alana worked a permanent night shift at the hotel, where she worked and lived and usually slept in the mornings. But there would have been no point in calling Alana the night before, because she didn't have a car. She had a bicycle, and, in any case, would have been at work. Sky still needed Alana's help, though, and she had to tell her what had happened, and that Richie was out of her life now. Her sibling often spent the afternoons with her and the children, and she wanted Alana to know that she was no longer at the apartment. The last thing she wanted to risk was her sister running into Richie without knowing how volatile the situation with him was. Alana came on the phone on a bright, breezy note. It's my day off. Well, at least until I report for duty tonight again. My coworker called in sick. She sighed before she listened in disgust to what her sister had to tell her, and she immediately offered to take care of the children, while Sky removed her possessions from Rich's apartment. Sky had dressed the kids, fed poor Sparky some toast, and cleaned up the kitchen by the time the two men Mateo and Antonio arrived. Alana arrived soon after them. "Oh my word, your face!" Alana gasped in horror when she saw her sibling's black eye. Alana was the taller, curvier version of Sky with blonde hair, gloriously straight blonde hair that Sky envied, down to her waist. "I should kill Richie for what he's done to you." Her kid sister swore fiercely. Sky calmed her down and left her with the children, grateful for her sister's support. She felt like a tramp in Enzo's overly large clothes, with the ugly bruises marring her face, and decided she would live in her sunglasses for the next week. Her nervous tension climbed as the car was parked outside the small apartment block. The apartment was mercifully empty. Feeling as though she were in some television competition for speed or a supermarket trolley rush, Sky clasped a roll of bin bags and went into the children's room first. In the midst of dismantling Shona's cot and recalling that there were a baby buggy, a high chair and various other bulky equipment as well, she noticed Antonio was on the phone. "We'll need a van to move all of it," he explained as Sky rammed clothes into a bag. "But Mateo will arrange one for us." "I should have said there was so much large stuff before we came." Sky sighed guiltily while Antonio bagged toys for her, leaving her free to go into the bedroom she had briefly shared with Richie. She grimaced as she glanced at the bed, averting her gaze from a place she had begun to dread. No, she didn't like sex. Contrary to every article she read, she hadn't enjoyed it. That might put her in a minority, but that was just how she was. And now that Richie was out of her life again, she could be honest about the fact. All that faking and pretending and enjoyment she didn't feel to keep Richie happy had drained her, made her feel dishonest, and, what was more, a little on the odd side because she evidently didn't like what other women liked. Well, that was done and dusted now, she reminded herself. A man-free future stretched in front of her. Sky had had such great hopes when she'd moved in with Richie, and it hurt her pride to remember her trusting naivety. She lifted the photograph of her mother and stepfather from the bedside cabinet, and tears of grief stung her eyes. Their loving happiness together had become her ideal, and it seemed laughable now to recall that she had actually hoped to build the same kind of relationship with Richie. After all, her stepfather had taken on two little girls that weren't his own, and treated them as though they were his own flesh and blood. Richie's readiness to accept that she came as a package with Brody and Shona had encouraged her to believe that he was a man similar to her stepfather. But once she had moved in with Richie, he had had little time to spare for her siblings, and he had complained bitterly that the children were always underfoot. He had also accused her of always putting her siblings first. In reality, she had done the opposite, and she was ashamed of that fact. She had put herself first. She had grabbed at that whole fantasy dream of a supportive, caring partner who would lighten her load and make her feel less alone. But family life had been too restrictive and domestic for Richie. For all his talk of marriage, he hadn't been ready to settle down. He might have wanted her, but the children had just been unfortunate baggage that came along with her. She finished putting her clothes and shoes into bags and hauled them out to the lounge, ready for the van that was coming. She pounced with relief on her sunglasses and put them on. The two men concentrated on getting her belongings down in the lift and packing the car. While she was helping them move the baby equipment down to the ground floor, the van arrived and, with it, another man, who made short work of loading everything. She was smiling as she walked out of the apartment block and was totally disconcerted to find herself unexpectedly confronted by Richie. "Where the hell have you been?" he demanded wrathfully as he strode up onto the pavement. "You were out all night and you didn't phone." "I was worried sick about you." Sky froze where she stood. Surprisingly, Richie looked the same as always. Blonde hair, an aggressively square jaw, pale blue eyes, an angry flush on his cheeks. He wasn't in uniform, clearly wasn't working, and she realized with an inner shiver that they had been very lucky that he hadn't come home while they were still in the apartment. At least she had got all their stuff out without any hassle, although she had left behind kitchen equipment and china she had brought from her own home, because she couldn't afford storage costs and could hardly clutter up Enzo's imposing house with her household goods. "I asked you a question," Richie reminded her, towering over her menacingly and glowering at Antonio. "And who is this man?" "I'm moving out, Richie," Sky framed tautly. "This is the last time you'll see me." "Back away," Antonio told Richie, stretching a protective arm out in front of Sky. "You're getting too close." "What the hell are you playing at, Sky?" Richie demanded furiously. "Why would you move out?" "So, we had a little fallout." Psyche whipped off her sunglasses. "You call this a little fallout?" "You beat me up." Richie averted his gaze from her bruised face. You fell. Don't blame me for it. Let's talk about this like adults in private. No, thanks. I don't want anything more to do with you, Sky countered, backing away and heading for the car. Richie made a sudden lurch in her direction in an effort to cut off her escape, only to be hauled back by Antonio. He twisted free again and swung around to punch the other man, but Antonio was too quick on his feet. Moving out of reach, Antonio quickly climbed into the car, which pulled away as soon as he closed the door. Breathless and shaken by Richie's continuing aggression, Sky was very relieved that Alana was looking after the children, and that Brody hadn't been subjected to another violent scene. Tears stung her eyes while Antonio and Mateo talked in their own language. He's following us, Antonio informed her. Sky suppressed a groan. She hadn't wanted Richie to find out where she was staying. She resisted the urge to twist around in her seat and look. Whatever you want. We're on call. The boss doesn't want us leaving you alone anywhere, Mateo explained. And after what I just witnessed, that's definitely the right decision. Her mobile phone buzzed. How are you? Enzo asked, huskily, a bit shaken up. Very grateful I wasn't on my own, she confided, thinking that he had the most beautiful voice, dark and deep, edged with his purring accent. I'm sorry I'm being such a nuisance. That's not what I think, Piccolo mio. Just make sure you keep my men with you. Enzo finished the call as the firm's head of marketing hovered, a languorous light in her appreciative gaze, as the sinuous brunette studied him with naked longing. He had had a difficult first day. Stripping out the top-heavy management layer in the company would gain him no friends. As for the new ideas he had brought with him, they were no more welcome, except to the few who'd had the foresight to see a more prosperous future for the firm. My girlfriend, Enzo lied smoothly. Martina had spent the day trying to flirt with him, brush against him, catch his attention. He wanted her to back off, and the pretense that he already had a woman in his life was the easiest cure for what ailed her. Regrettably, Enzo was all too well accustomed to women who threw themselves at him. He was rich, young, and single, and such pronounced attention went with the territory. Being hunted and propositioned didn't turn him on, and he did not want that complication in the workplace. I thought you were in England alone, Mr. Durante, Martina remarked. Enzo cursed the notoriety of his name. Of course, the staff knew who he was, Lorenzo Durante, dubbed the Playboy Prince by the Italian media, a moniker he had inherited from his late father, whose legendary exploits with women had destroyed his marriage soon after Enzo was born. He and his wife had been in the throes of their last attempt at reconciliation when they had died together. I'm not. He murmured the untruth without hesitation and found himself thinking with helpless longing of Sky, who had no notion of flirting with him or jumping his bones. It was a new experience for him to be treated as an adult man, rather than a fabulously rich asset to be acquired. It was also oddly restful. Alana was an invaluable help when their possessions were loaded willy-nilly into the hall. It's truly over with Richie? She prompted hopefully as she set the high chair into the kitchen. You know he'll come after you and apologize and maybe even grovel and promise that it won't ever happen again. It doesn't matter. It's over forever and ever, Sky confirmed. I don't ever want to see him again. He saw us leaving, and he was still in a temper. Alana frowned. Tell me about the businessman who owns this place, she urged. Sky made coffee for everyone and allowed Brody to take his trike out into the back garden with Sparky, because it was fully enclosed by a fence. While helping to feed Shona in her high chair, Sky filled in the details about what had happened the night before. And there's nothing icky about this guy, Enzo? Alana pressed suspiciously. No, definitely no ick factor there. To be honest, he's gorgeous, but I don't have any worries in that direction. I imagine he goes for much more glamorous types than me. I'm worried because I honestly don't think Richie is going to leave you alone. He's more likely to act like a stalker, always wanting to know your business, Alana murmured anxiously. I think you need to report him to the police. What if he finds you on your own and attacks you again? Sky mulled that thorny question over while Alana helped her get unpacked and persuaded her to choose the bedroom next door to hers for the children because there was more space and storage. There were 6 bedrooms in total, and she could always double up with the children if Enzo was entertaining and needed an extra room. The unpacking achieved, Sky mustered her shopping list and rang Antonio to tell him that she was ready to go into town. Alana offered to accompany her to help her with the kids. As they left the supermarket laden with shopping, Alana took the children straight to her car, and Paola took the trolley from Sky. You shouldn't be pushing that, she told Sky firmly. As the older woman returned to the car to unload the trolley, Richie stepped into view between 2 cars and grabbed Sky's arm. Who are those people you are with? He demanded angrily. Who owns that house you're staying in? Let me go. As he leant down to her, she smelled the alcohol on him and grimaced. It's over, Richie. Let go of my arm. Let go of my sister, Alana seethed, running up to intervene and aiming a kick at the blonde man. In a fury, Richie swung around as Sky finally broke free of him and found Antonio in his path. But it was Paola who surged forward, seemingly out of nowhere, and took Richie down with a martial arts move, dragged his hands behind his back and, with a remarkable lack of drama, handed him over to the security guard approaching them. Now you know why you have to go to the police, Paola said quietly as Sky, white-faced and trembling, accompanied her sister back to her car. That man is going to continue coming after you. He's angry and stubborn. I'll do it this evening, she promised shakily. Sky started dinner. But before she even got halfway through her preparations, Enzo strode into the kitchen. Your sister has agreed to stay with your siblings. I'm here to take you to the police station before you lose your nerve. Sky tensed. But you have no choice, he reminded her. No. She had had no choices while she was living with Richie. Sky conceded, thinking of all the times she had given way to Richie to placate him. But now she was supposed to be leading her life again and making her own choices. Even so, it seemed that reclaiming her freedom required more from her than simply walking away from Richie. It meant she had to fight. Not go apologetically about her business. Certainly not depend on Enzo's employees to protect her. She had to fight and stand on her own 2 feet. Okay. Maybe I should get changed first, she said, smoothing damp palms down her slender thighs, feeling that her jeans and long-sleeved t-shirt might be too casual. You'll do fine as you are, Enzo asserted as she went into the cloakroom to retrieve her padded jacket, wincing as she slid her arms into the sleeves. He's gorgeous, Alana mouthed at her in wonderment when she glanced into the sitting room where her sister was now sitting with the children. Sky went pink and glanced uneasily at Enzo. He needed a shave. His strong jawline was shadowed by blue-black stubble. He also looked a little weary, and her heart smote her without warning. He should have been coming home to relax and eat. I was planning such a good meal for dinner, she confided guiltily. It'll keep until later. But you must be hungry, she protested as he led her outside into the cold, crisp air. Take the sunshades off, he urged. Sky lowered them to blink at him. Her bruised eye was opening again, and now he saw the unusual color of them in the artificial light. A violet blue, so light and soft it reminded him of lilac blossom in the spring. His lush black lashes came down low over his eyes, and he turned his head away, irritated by that momentary distraction. Let's go, he urged. Sky climbed awkwardly into the passenger seat. There was no avoiding the step up into the car, no way that every movement of her body could fail to jar her ribs. She grimaced, wondering about that strange moment when Enzo had stared down at her. He had wanted to see how she looked, and the news was nothing good. The bruises round her eye had turned all the colors of the rainbow, and had only deepened overnight. But at least her eye was opening again. The instant they arrived at the police station, Enzo requested a senior officer, his quiet confidence patent. Shown into an interview room, Enzo explained why they had asked for a senior officer. A female officer was called, and Sky was shown into another interview room, this time without Enzo by her side, where she explained what had happened with Richie. After she had made a statement, she had to wait for a police doctor to arrive and undergo an examination, and have her injuries photographed. Not once did anyone refer to the fact that her assailant was a policeman who worked under the same roof as them. That professional attitude eased Sky's surging tension. By the time she saw Enzo again, she was exhausted and her throat was sore from all the talking she'd had to do. He escorted her back out to the car. Paola and the rest of her team are witnesses and will go in tomorrow to make statements, he explained. I also think you need to ask for a non-molestation order to be placed on your ex. I've arranged for you to consult a solicitor about that tomorrow. You've had to go to an enormous amount of trouble on my behalf. Sky groaned in embarrassment. Why did you bother? First of all, now that you're working for me, your safety is my responsibility. Second, your ex cannot be allowed to get away with hurting and threatening you, nor can he be permitted to continue working in a position of trust. Thirdly, the children must be assured of a safe environment. You only met me yesterday, Sky reminded him. Don't you wish you had simply driven on past? Enzo shrugged a broad shoulder and filtered the car back down the driveway. Here we are, home to the haunted house. Why do you call it that? That's what it reminds me of. The era and the decor. If we don't have a ghost, I'll feel shortchanged. So, you don't own this place? No, I assume it's rented. My grandfather made the arrangements for my stay. By the way, your sister had to leave to go to work. Paola took over as babysitter. There she went again, Sky thought in embarrassment. She was one big problem. Employing her when she came with 2 children was more hassle than any job she could do would be worth. I had no work to do. Your sister put the children to bed before she left, Paola told her soothingly. Do you feel better now that you've reported him? Yes, Sky fibbed, because, in truth, she felt worse and more scared than ever, because Richie would be enraged that she had gone to the police to report the assault. As Paola departed, Sky went into the kitchen to start the meal she had planned. Enzo appeared in the doorway. You can cook tomorrow night. I've ordered a meal from the hotel your sister works for to be delivered for both of us. It's late and you're exhausted. Cooking is supposed to be my job, Sky reminded him, stubbornly. And tonight, you're having a night off. She wanted to argue with him, but there was a hard edge to his fabulous bone structure that persuaded her to accept his wishes. You're tired too, she conceded. What was your first day like? Bloody, he confided with a feeling grimace. Sky went into the dining room to set the table for the meal. She put the electric fire on to make it less gloomy and lit the lamp on the corner table. Enzo had gone upstairs, and when he reappeared, his hair was still damp from the shower, and he was clad in faded jeans that fitted him like a glove and a gray sweater. For a split second, she found herself staring, and she quickly caught herself and moved past him to fill a jug with cold water and bring glasses. For goodness sake, she worked for the guy. Agreed, he was breathtakingly handsome, and her heart had skipped a beat as he'd walked into the room. But she had to bury those kinds of female responses and pay no heed to such promptings. Fortunately for her, she was not the most ravishing woman on the planet, so he was highly unlikely to look at her in the same way. What made it a bloody day? She asked quietly. Redundancies, but if business goes the way I hope, we'll be hiring more people in the near future, he pointed out. That's how it goes. Is it Mackey's, the packaging factory in the industrial estate that was bought out? Sky asked. Mackey's is the main employer around here. Enzo nodded as the doorbell chimed. Sky went to answer the door and stepped back as a heated trolley was trundled in complete with waiter. In here, Enzo instructed. Sit down, Sky. Awkwardly, she took a seat at the table when she had planned to take her plate through to the kitchen. We'll serve ourselves, Enzo decreed. I'll do it, Sky offered, registering that there was an entire 3-course meal awaiting them, and utterly taken aback by the lavish quality of the food. The salad starter was set out first, and the desserts laid on the sideboard. This is lovely, Sky said warmly. I wasn't expecting such a spread. She shook out her napkin and began to eat with appetite. Enzo told her that the company was to begin selling biodegradable packaging, which was currently much in demand. To enable that switch, new machinery would be installed in the factory, and there was already a large contract in the pipeline. I think my know. My grandfather tailored this job for my benefit. How? I own one of the largest companies that provide packaging of that kind in the world, he admitted with the utmost casualness. My grandfather hoped that I would have a personal interest in setting up a new business in that field. The main course was served while Enzo talked. Although she had never thought about packaging much, she was a keen recycler. When the waiter departed with the trolley, leaving them to attend to the desserts, she was relieved not to have anyone else listening to their conversation, although she had noticed that silent third presence had not inhibited Enzo in the slightest. Every minute in his company, she was learning something new about him. Seemingly, Lorenzo Durante was much richer than she had assumed. The largest company in the world? She should have checked him out on the internet, she thought wryly. Clearly, he was accustomed to having people wait on him. Did you have an argument with your ex? Enzo intoned quietly, once they were alone. Is that what started the assault? No, there was no argument. He came home from work in a foul mood, Sky explained heavily. He had found out that he had failed the exam he needs to pass to go for promotion. It was the 3rd time he'd failed, and he blamed us for it. How? He blew up in a rage, shouting that it was impossible for him to study with the kids around, Sky proffered, her soft mouth compressing. I made the mistake of trying to reason with him. I didn't remind him that he had failed the exam twice before we moved in, or that I only saw him trying to study once. I just said that the next time I would take the children out, and that's when he went over the edge because, apparently, he can't sit the exam again until next year. He punched me and called me stuff, and when I fell, he went for my throat. I honestly thought he was going to kill me. Enzo swore in Italian under his breath. I'm sorry I brought it up again. It happened. Sky lifted and dropped a shoulder, and then stood up to fetch the desserts from the sideboard. But he'd never hit me before. I wouldn't have stayed with him if he had. How long were you with him? For an instant, Sky focused on his eyes, amber gold in the low light, enhanced by spiky black lashes, and her mouth ran dry. Sky? Oh, you asked me a question, she recalled belatedly, her face burning with discomfiture because she had zoned out just looking at his eyes. We were together 4 months, not very long, really. But it wasn't working for me. He was controlling, possessive, suspicious of every move I made. He didn't want me to have friends. He didn't even like me seeing Alana. It's a challenge to act normally with someone like that, and more, I felt like a cat on hot bricks around him. If it hadn't been for the children and my reluctance to disrupt their lives again, I wouldn't have stayed as long as I did with him. Will you go back into teaching? If I can find a job that doesn't entail moving miles away from my sister, yes. Did you get any word about my car? Yes. Enzo sighed. There's so much wrong with it. You'd be wiser letting it go to the scrapyard. No. Sky cut in, her dismay obvious. Mavis was my mum's car, and she's irreplaceable. Enzo studied her in disbelief. Mavis? You actually named that hunk of junk? Mum did. Sky stood up. I'll go and fetch the coffee. I got the machine working. I even ground the beans. The car has sentimental value? Yes. Mavis comes with a carload of childhood happy memories. At least you knew your mother. Mine died with my father when I was 6 weeks old, Enzo admitted. A car accident. My grandparents raised me. Photographs aren't much of a comfort, are they? Sky quipped as she hovered beside him on her way out of the door to the kitchen. Without thought, she squeezed his shoulder in consolation. At least you have grandparents. Mine were long gone by the time my mother and stepfather passed away. Enzo blinked in shock at that affectionate shoulder squeeze. The only person who had ever touched him like that was his grandmother. Outside the bedroom door, Enzo was unaccustomed to such gestures, and in the bedroom he usually avoided that kind of intimacy, because it was likely to give women the wrong message. After almost marrying the wrong woman at university, flings had become much more Enzo's style with the opposite sex. There were no misunderstandings or future expectations that way. A cup of coffee was slid in front of him. Sky watched him sip and smile with pleasure, and she began to clear away the dishes. No, sit down and join me, Enzo urged. I have a proposition to put to you. Her brow furrowed, her violet eyes widened and flashed with curiosity, and he smiled. You look like a kitten when you do that. Sky pursed her lips. Think panther or tiger, definitely not kitten. And Enzo burst out laughing at that advice. I don't think that's likely to work for me, Piccolomeo. How do you feel about acting as my fake girlfriend at a party next week? He extended, the laughter still lending a buoyant afterglow to his lean, darkly attractive features. He had charm in spades, she conceded abstractedly, struggling to concentrate.